Gotcha.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another weapon popularity review for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. It is March, and the last time we did this was in January. I've been taking a look at the weapon popularity for the weapon usage in Monster Hunter since the game came out quite a while ago. Has it been 2 years? I think it's 2 years long now. And we always like to talk about, which weapons should be moving, and are the buffs going to affect a weapon? Is the weapon meta going to affect the weapon? Now we have this new thing where we talk about the speedrunners tier list, which we got from the Seiken website. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I'm probably saying the name wrong. We have a lot of stuff to look at. I have something new for you guys this time as well. Now we also are going to be including a vote that we take in our Discord server, where players can vote on their favorite weapon, and we're going to be taking a look at that as well. Since we're talking about weapon popularity, we might as well include that in the discussion. So the only thing about the vote is that it won't represent weapon usage, just what people claim that they like. Okay, and it can be skewed. There's only a certain population that participates, of course, but the votes were actually pretty good, so we'll be tracking how many people actually voted as well. Okay, but enough of that, let's go ahead and get started with the weapon popularity comparisons. So we're going to begin with the PC, because the PC had the most number of changes over the last 2 months. The last time we did weapon popularity, Iceborne was coming out on PC, and we were wondering if there was going to be any major changes to the weapon usages. And yeah, so this one actually had the most changes, the PC did. What you can see is that people dropped usage of the bow. It went from 14% to 13% in March. The other thing you notice is that dual blades also fell. It started at 9%, fell to 8%. So this is actually interesting because that's kind of what I would predict. I might have even mentioned it in the previous video. When you start up Iceborne, one of the things you think about is, oh my gosh, now I need 5 brand new bows for all the elements. I need 5 brand new dual blades for all the elements. And, I need all kinds. Those are 2 weapons where they're pretty gear heavy, right? In order to get all the damage out of them, you got to have all the right decorations, all the right pieces of armor. Whereas something like, I don't know, the greatsword's very easy. So you see the usage for both the bow and the dual blades fall. Most of the top weapons don't really move that much. The longsword is the most popular on the PC at 20%. But then when we get down the list, you can see that the light bowgun falls in usage. I'm predicting that'll jump back up because players on the PC are going to learn a lot more about sticky ammo, especially with Raging having come out, and especially with Safi'jiiva coming out with the Aqua Shot for sticky ammo. So I'm betting that that's going to go back up a little bit. Switch Axe went up by a small amount, up to 5%. There were some pretty good weapon improvements to the Switch Axe in Iceborne, so that's actually not a surprise. And then everything else mostly stays the same except for the Hunting Horn, which also went up by a small amount from 1% usage to 2% usage. Now, Monster Hunter doesn't tell you fractional amounts, so it might have actually been like 1.7% going up to 2%, or it might have been 1.0% going up to 2%. You have no idea. All we know is it's gone from 1% to 2%. That is an increase. Terrific. Those are going to be the changes for the PC. Let's move on to talking about changes on the PlayStation. The PlayStation had the fewest changes. I'm always curious why that happens because I suspect the PlayStation has the largest community. I could be wrong with that. It's not just about community size, it's also activity size. Are you guys playing over there? Are you guys playing on the PlayStation? And who knows, maybe it has died off a little bit because Safi'jiiva came out a while ago. So a lot of people already, the hardcore players already got all their Safi'jiiva weapons. They've already tinkered with them, and maybe they're like, all right, what's next? We're all waiting for Raging Brachydios to come out. We're waiting for Furious Raging to come out. He's not here yet. So I suspect plenty of players have maybe taken a break until they do come out. We know they come out March 23rd. In the meantime, the only thing that's changed is, well, actually nothing's changed. I wrote an orange bar there. Orange represents there's been no change. We were expecting a change with Sword and Shield usage, and that's because Sword and Shield has received a buff, so that you get more raw damage on the, what do they call that? Perfect Rush, I believe is the name of the move. Also, the uppercut is capable of softening or tenderizing a monster's part in one move. So all of those are pretty large buffs for the Sword and Shield, but no, it didn't change at all, actually. And then we have the Xbox, which also had very few changes. You can see that the dual blades fell slightly in usage and the greatsword moved up to 3rd place. Sword and Shield on the Xbox also didn't move around very much, which is making me think maybe I'll make a video on that pretty soon in order to introduce you guys to Perfect Rush and how the sword and shield is actually doing a great deal more damage than it used to. The heavy bowgun moved up slightly. Dual blades fell a little bit in popularity, and heavy bowguns, the usage went up a little bit as well. Which is, I don't know, I'm always surprised that the heavy bowguns don't hit higher up on the list, because we know from the speedrunners tier list, it's at the very top of the list because of its spread ammo. Spread ammo on the heavy bowgun is pretty ridiculous, just like power shots on the bow are pretty strong as well, and the bow usually ranks pretty high. What's nice about the Xbox, once again, is that the longsword's only at 15%. This is the lowest of any console, so maybe if everyone on the Xbox rallied behind one weapon, like here we have the Insect Glaive at 14%, it is probably possible to get the longsword to fall to second place and have it be replaced by any other weapon. For the last entirety of 2 years, the longsword has held first place on every platform, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. It's never been in second place. The other thing that's also been true is weapon usage for the lance has always been extremely low, and it's been in last place on the Xbox for a little while, and if it's not on last place on Xbox, it's in second to last place on the PlayStation and the PC. So Lance has been holding on for its dear life for a while. This is not surprising though, because the Lance ranks very low on damage output on the speedrunners tier list, so that's actually kind of what you would expect. And finally, we have the new thing that I talked about in the intro, the Discord weapon popularity for March. Now we're going to have this fun thing where you can go over to the weapon popularity channel in the Discord server and you can vote on your favorite weapon. Now you have to distinguish this from the in-game weapon popularity because that one's based on actual weapon usage. This one's based on what people think they like to play. So you might be going in your head, yeah, Charge Blade is my favorite weapon, but actually it turns out you play the heavy bowgun sticky ammo more than any other weapon because you're a little bitch, right? So when you take a look at this, we have Charge Blade all the way at the top with 80 votes. Not bad. Underneath that is Greatsword in second place, followed by Longsword, Hammer, and Heavy Bowgun. What's interesting about that, my impression of the list is that all of the weapons that have really big explosive sort of attacks, big heavy hitters, they're all on the upper side of the list, except for, I guess you would say, Longsword and Light Bowgun. Those two are not necessarily like that. They're not heavy hitters, but the Longsword kind of is. Like, the Longsword has its special finisher, Helm Splitter, and even though it's kind of like a bunch of rapid attacks going in, it feels kind of like a high impact move, doesn't it? And then Light Bowgun, you can expect it to be higher up on the list just because of sticky ammo, spamming sticky ammo essentially. You got Hunting Horn also on the upper half of the list, right? There's 14 weapons, while Hunting Horn comes in 7th place. That's technically the upper half, and that's also one of those heavy hitting weapons. Then you have Bow and Gun Lance, again, both coming in a little higher, which also does not surprise me. Actually, I'm surprised Bow doesn't rank a little higher than that, but I think what happens with the bow is you get some really good players who get really good with the bow and then they get all the speedruns done, but the general population probably does not use bow quite as much, and who knows? This is not based on player usage, just on how people feel about it. Gun Lance ranks pretty high. What's interesting is all the way at the bottom we have the Lance in last place. Poor Lance. I think it's time for Lance to receive a buff. We know Sword and Shield received a buff, and Sword and Shield was probably already doing more damage than the Lance in the first place. Where's the Lance buff? There's got to be something nice for the buff. I'd really like to see that. Above that is the Dual Blades and the Insect Glaive. You would not expect them to rank so low, but I guess somebody does have to. So Insect Glaive and Dual Blades, I don't know how often I see Dual Blades in our multiplayer matches together. Insect Glaive is pretty rare though. Wouldn't you agree? I almost never see players using Insect Glaive. Maybe we ought to make some Insect Glaive videos as well, just to give it a little boost. My understanding of this weapon is that it really doesn't do that bad. It's fairly decent in terms of damage output, even though it almost doesn't seem that way, but it is. It ranks pretty well in the speedrunner tier list. Alright, so that's going to be the new Discord weapon popularity. Let me know in the comment sections if you'd like to see that. We'll have a channel in the Discord for that called Weapon Popularity. We also have a new channel in the Discord called Builds, and we'll be updating that channel with probably optimized builds, maybe focusing primarily on attack, but also maybe there's some comfort builds, maybe some defensive builds, maybe wide range. So we're going to be putting a lot of effort into that to give you guys something to go off of when you're trying to put together a solid build, because I find that having that as a resource is really useful. Okay, so we got weapon popularity and we got build channels now. Finally, let me make some predictions for the weapon popularity for the future. So I suspect weapons that are ranking high on the speedrunner tier list are actually going to start affecting the weapon popularity lists, even if just a little bit, because the more people are aware of it, the more people talk about it, the more they'll start to be interested in tinkering with weapons that are perceived to have the highest damage output. Similarly, I expect weapons like the Lance and the Hunting Horn to remain very low until Capcom sees fit to give them a buff, although for the Hunting Horn you can argue when you're in a multiplayer fight using Attack Up Extra Large it's actually doing pretty well. I think that there's a chance still for Sword and Shield to shift upward as people become more educated on the fact that Sword and Shield is doing much better than it used to do. I think there's also room for changes on the PC just because Safajiva is coming out, but we really won't see much on the consoles until Furious Raging and Raging Brachydios come out, and if the weapons from those monsters are actually going to change the weapon meta at all, which of course always excites people to try new things, but also the way the weapon looks also excites people to try new things, okay? So that's going to be all of my predictions for the future. I'll see you guys in 2 months. On a final note, if you want to support my channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment on this video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.